Hi everyone, Raphael Harry here, and you're listening to White Label American, a podcast where we hear stories from an immigrant or two, sometimes more. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. So, in this episode that you shall be revisiting today, you get to meet my missus, Verena Thoene. She's the mother of my child, and she's the love of my life. And you get to find out how her journey took her from Germany through the east coast of United States to the Netherlands and a whole bunch of in-betweens. You get to find out how terrible I was on our first date. Yeah, I do deny being terrible, but I should have released this episode on Valentine's Day. But yeah, it's a beautiful story that she'll never forget, and she'll never stop rubbing it in my face. But I hope you all enjoy it, and especially for those of you who are new to this episode, you'll see why many people love this episode and keep referring to it every time they see me. Those who live in the neighborhood or those who've come across me in person. So check it out, and yes, I'll see you all next week. And there's a lot more, plenty of new guests coming on the podcast, and there'll be some returning guests too that we shall have on the show. Once again, thank you for listening, and I appreciate you all. So don't forget to share, and invite your friends. Don't keep it all to yourself. What are you doing, people? Share. So check out Verena. Welcome to another episode of White Label American. Thank you all for joining us today. Everyone's doing great. Shout out to our people on the front lines. Love each and every one of you. Thank you to those of you who are protesting for our rights, and our delivery guys, and everyone doing the right thing. Black Lives Matter. Love each and every one of you, and support each and every one of you. Today's guest is one of the most important and the most special guests that we've ever had. Well, actually, we have two guests, but only one guest you hear from, and you figure out who the other one is if she decides to make herself known. But she's in the studio. Trust me, you'll figure out who she is in a little bit. She has a way of intervening. But she's been on the show before without really making herself known. So the official guest of this episode is one of the biggest supporters that this show has, and is someone without whom this podcast wouldn't exist, and is one of the silent backers of this podcast. And it's a great pleasure to bring and introduce the person known as Mama Abby, and at the same time, a HR professional, has been in New York for a while, but technically upstate. So we'll still count as New York. We'll count, but technically she's upstate. But she wasn't born in New York. She wasn't born in the United States. But at the same time, she's a New Yorker. And by the rule book, she's a New Yorker. And she is a super awesome person who's just, she brings that efficiency to everything that she does. And today is about her story, and she's just going to deliver and tell us a lot more. So without much further ado, I introduce Verena Thoene. I think I still messed it up. But anyway, that's the lady known as my wife, my spouse. And she's going to talk about jollof rice and a whole lot of stuff today. So we'll settle the dispute on jollof rice and on other matters. So welcome on the show, Verena. Wie geht's?
Sehr gut, danke.
Yeah, genau.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we need to speak English now. We're in America. Speak American. All right. So how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. It's good to see you. And I'm pretty sure people will be like, well, don't they live together or what? But anyway. Yeah, and they're wondering who the other guest is. So you might hear someone ramble a little bit, but she's our daughter. And she's 2 years old now and has a lot of opinions. So she has been bribed. And so she's quiet right now, but she might want to jump in on the interview, but she's hiding and just chilling in the corner. So let's dive in. So let's begin at the very beginning. Where was Verena born, and can Verena introduce us to her childhood?
So I was born in Muenster, Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, close to the Dutch border. So that's still considered, I guess, like the northwest of Germany. So we do consider ourselves northerners versus southerners. That's very important.
We'll come to that.
And I grew up the first 8 or 9 years in a suburb of Münster. And when I say suburb, it's almost like a suburb of a suburb. It was a really little place that didn't even have a school. So we had to ride our bikes for 2 miles to get to school. And it doesn't look like this anymore, but it was literally 2 miles of fields and cows right and left of the street. So very different to where I live now in Brooklyn. And then we moved when I was 9-ish. We moved to Münster proper and actually lived really close to downtown. Still, Münster's not that big, so you're still very close to kind of the big parks and forest and, fields and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was a 10-minute bike ride from downtown shopping mile and whatever. So that was a very different environment.
So why is it so important to, the differentiate between northerners and southerners?
Well, so one thing is soccer, right? You usually
Football.
Yeah, football. Because if you are
football.
supporting a northerner team, then you usually don't also support a southern team, right? You will find very few people who support BVB and Bayern at the same time. And if you do know someone, then you have to seriously question them, I think, how that happened.
That's true. I don't think I've ever met anyone who supports BVB, which is Borussia Dortmund for for regular Americans. And I've never seen anyone supporting Borussia and Bayern except on the continental scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the northerners tend to pride themselves and not having as much of an accent, I guess. The further south you go, the more people you hear speaking with more of an accent, like a local or regional accent. We do have that in the north, but I guess people want to think that we don't. When you come from the north, you want to think that you don't have that. So at least that's yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Where I grew up.
Interesting. So, with that being said, what do you consider your favorite childhood memory?
So that's kind of hard. I have a lot of good childhood memories.
You can throw 2 in there.
Even that would still be hard, right? So I'm just going to make a more of a broader statement. So even though I maybe was complaining when I was a child and always going on holiday somewhere where we would drive to, like the Netherlands or Denmark, we would go camping a lot when I was little. And I'm sure I was complaining at the time, right? But now I look back at that really favorably. And another thing is when I was growing up, sometimes we didn't go on vacation during the summer. And so instead, my parents bought me like a season ticket for the local pool. And I would just go off and be at the pool every day. Now that I don't have the possibility or the ability to do that, like that's another really like great childhood memory that I have.
So one thing our daughter seems to like is water and just jumping in water or being in the bathtub and whatever. So you're saying you may have contributed to that because I thought it was all about me.
Well, so interestingly enough, about the first 5 years of my life, I hated water.
So
So
it's all me.
I don't know about like bath time, but I would hate getting water in my face when washing hair. I was afraid of the waves on the beach, so my dad had to go and dig up a hole so that only the waves that crashed the furthest would deposit a little bit of water in the hole, and that's where I would sit and play.
Okay, that sounds really not enough.
Like I was supposed to, or I was in this class to learn how to swim, and I was just not having it. I wasn't putting my face in the water. I refused to put my face in the water for the longest time.
So how did
And
you like swimming pools then?
so at one point, we were on vacation in the Netherlands with family friends, and one of them took me to this there was like a really fancy pool with like a lot of splash things and twirly waters and like an adventure pool or however you want to call that. And there was this area where you had to dive under this partition to go from the inside to the outside. It was really just, you really just had to dip your head in the water basically to get under it. And for some reason, she was able to get through to me on how to do that and not be afraid. And ever since, my parents, like through the rest of my childhood, my parents were not able to get me out of the water ever again.
And how old were you when that happened?
I must have been 5 or 6 because right around 6ish is when so in Germany you get like this little certificate when you know how to swim like one full lane.
Yep.
And you get to like dive in a little bit. So I got that like right around like going into first grade.
So
ever since first grade, like
Yeah.
that's when I would just spend, every free warm summer day at the pool if I was able to. I actually got so far that we had this rule that it had to be a certain temperature because I was the kind of kid I would just be like, well, the sun's out, like let's go. Whereas the rule was that it had to be a certain temperature to actually go. So I tried to manipulate the thermometer that was hanging outside the kitchen window
no.
so that it would show warmer than it actually was.
So that, in a way, speaks to the person you are today because that was like one of the first times you conquered an obstacle in your path and
Yes.
never looked back. And nowadays, you're that type of person who, once there's a hurdle in front of you, you don't. It's like once you set your mind to conquering it, you don't think twice. You just like, pow, I'm going to take it down. I bring that up because, like, during the pregnancy, I still remember when you were like, I'm going to build this furniture set. And I was like, should you be doing this? And
You mean at
just-
8.5 months pregnant
and-
or 9 months
and
pregnant? Yeah.
You were like, yeah, I want to do this. And pow, 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 pow. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I had to, I think, well, I don't know where I was going, but I was like, yeah, when I get back, I'll come help you. And by the time I got back, the whole set or whatever had been built. And I was like, wow. Just, that German efficiency is right there. But yeah, so it started pretty early. I see it. But yeah, it comes with the territory. You got it in you like pretty early. So yeah, that's awesome.
I never looked at it that way, actually.
Yeah, that's why I always ask about the favorite childhood memory. It shows a lot of stuff people have in them from pretty early. So another thing about you is that that makes you stand out is one of your parents happens to be a police officer, and over here, when people hear that, there's a certain expectation, like not just all over in the United States, around the world, people have that interpretation, like, there's a certain expectation of how you were raised. And when you tell people of how you grew up, what's the reaction, or how do people react when they hear that? Like thinking about looking to your dad being a police officer, I'm like, oh, the expectation, like, was he this type of person, or like the picture that has been created of someone in uniform?
Yeah, I think that does not apply to how I grew up, in general terms, at least. Especially the way police officers are often seen in the U.S. Like, I'm not familiar with that type of policing to begin with. Part of it is probably because Muenster is just like not that exciting and not that dangerous. It's a little like, it's a city, right? It's like, I don't know, 250,000 people or something like that. But it's not the type of policing that you see in the US. It's not the type of policing that you see in the media. When I think about growing up as a daughter of a police officer, what stays in my mind is like my dad would drop by with his colleagues to like have coffee for their break, right? Instead of going to buy somewhere, because we lived so close to downtown to where his precinct was. And when we had just moved there, the whole neighborhood was talking about it, gossiping about it, because, every other week the police has to come by.
Oh.
Because they didn't know that it was actually my dad. Another thing that I do remember, which was kind of funny, later on when I was in high school, there was something going on where you needed to get something signed. You were allowed to participate in something, and you had to pay a certain amount. And I had forgotten the money. I'd taken the signed slip, and I had forgotten the money on the table. So my mom had called my dad already and told him that I'd forgotten it. So he was waiting with the police car in front of the school, was waiting for me, and kind of like waved me over in front of all the teachers that were out and doing like the traffic monitoring, right? Yeah. For the bicycles, stuff like that, and for the buses, in front of all the other students. Like, he waved me over, and then it was really just to give me the money to pay for my like school, whatever fee that was. But of course, like, that kept the rumor mill going.
Oh, the rumor mill that you...
Oh, no, that I must, like, something must be going on, because, the police, like, picked me, the only person out of all the, hundreds of kids going to school that morning. They picked me out. But yeah, so when I say policing, the way I saw policing in Germany, or generally in Münster, right? Like, it was different as things like, I got tickets. And nobody was taking care of them. I had to pay them, right? Like, my dad didn't bail me out of a ticket. Like, if I got the ticket for a reason, like, let's say my bicycle didn't have a lamp that worked, right? You actually get a ticket for that. If you run a red light on a bicycle, you get a ticket for that. Even if you're not of the age that you're allowed to drive, it doesn't matter. Once you're actually allowed to drive, even if you're not driving a car, even if you're riding a bicycle, and you run a red light, you can still get points against your license.
Oh, so
or
by the time
like
you get your license, you've already been building points.
No, you haven't. But like you can get in real trouble, like if you actually have a driver's license, and then like break the traffic laws on other vehicles, apparently. Luckily, like, shortly after I got my license, I moved, so that wasn't so much of a problem. But yeah, I had to pay my own tickets, and if my dad got a ticket, he had to go and pay it too, right? Like, so it's not the same as you have it here oftentimes, where people have the expectation that if you are related to a police officer, you get breaks, you don't get the parking ticket, or you don't have to pay it, that kind of stuff. I did not see that.
One thing I found interesting when I started getting to know your story was especially when I got to meet your family, was how they allowed you to be you.
Yes.
And I just found it fascinating that, most officers, police officers that I knew, children of those people, they seem to be like by the book, strict. Like, this is how they expect their kids to grow up. And it doesn't include allowing them be themselves. But you got allowed to express yourself, and just found that fascinating. And so by the time I started knowing about how the police, the police in Muenster operated, it wasn't a surprise per se, because I already knew, I'd heard about, interactions of other people, like service members who had been stationed in Germany, the interactions with police officers in other cities in Germany, and it was a lot different from what they had experienced here, and it's part of the reason why a few people who I got to know, including someone who's been on the show already, said they just felt like, yeah, Germany is home. They would rather stay in Germany than return back to the United States. So that's part didn't surprise me, but it was the way you were allowed to grow up and be you. That was the thing that shocked me. I was like, wow, there was no this. You don't talk back to me. You don't this. You play by the rules, young lady. And I was like, wow, you was.
Yeah, no, that's not at all how I grew up. That's very true. Yes, I was encouraged to discuss things and question things. I don't know if that was a conscious decision that my parents made, but it was always okay to like discuss politics, for example. And it was always part of the conversation, especially the conversations I had with my mother, from a very early age on. And then once I got a little bit older, like let's say 12, 13, then if they had friends over and, there was a conversation amongst the adults and I just happened to sit at the same table, I wasn't shut out of the conversation just because I wasn't as old as them, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't an adult. If I wanted to be included, I was included.
Oh.
And I do think that shaped me, and I do think that shaped how I've learned and how I've argued or discussed things. So I do think that was very helpful. And the other thing I think where my parents really let me be myself is when it came to like expression through clothes. I know that might not sound like a big deal, but to me it was a huge deal because your parents buy your clothes, like they tell you what to wear when you're little, right? Like you have some choice, but they're still the ones paying for it. So at some point when I was like 12, 13 or something, my parents actually gave me a budget. So we figured out how much they spend in an average year on like my clothes and like other incidentals, broke that down by 12. And that was the amount I would get every month into my own personal bank account. And then I could decide if I wanted to buy like the expensive jeans because I thought I needed to have them. But then I maybe was only able to buy one pair instead of three, right? Yeah. But that was a choice that they empowered me to make. And so that gave me a lot more ability to express myself, just like in the sense that, I could make my own decisions.
That's powerful. And
it also teaches you how to, value money and how to budget.
Yeah. That's why I said it's powerful, because it's something that I see and I understand the people who are making the case for it now, that we need to teach our kids financial management and all that. I'm not against it, but I'm also kind of like, there's something that feels, when it's forced, it feels forced in a way. But something organic, like the way you went through it, when it's coming from the family, it stays with you longer than when it's in a classroom setting. And if you don't have, it becomes, do you have somebody who's, what's the relationship with the chemistry with the teacher and the students? Do you, is the teacher equipped to be in that room? Is it you know, is the school well funded? You know, is the district and all those other dynamics start to play in there. And then is it okay if it's this district, if the school is in the wealthy district, then you know that's going to be well taken care of. If it's in the wrong district, then you know then all those questions are going to be asked. But when you say a family where they gave that power of independence to the child, like, you know, you just brought a memory of what happened. How old was I then? I was probably uh, between, I think 10 or between 10 and 11, 10 and 12. And we went to, I think that was we went to Port Harcourt. We were staying in Benin then. So probably, no, before 10, I was probably 8. Yeah, between 8 and 10. And we went to Port Harcourt to visit an uncle. And one of my cousins, who I can't even recall his name now, he took some money which he claimed he had been saving. The story was a little bit mushy, I can't recall, but he disappeared. And this was back when we weren't supposed to be, we weren't given freedom to go out per se, but sometimes we rebelled and did our thing. And he was a little bit older than we were. I think, yeah, he was a teenager. So he was probably maybe like 5, 6, at most 7 years older than we were. And he went out, but came back late. So they were freaking out. I remember my mom, it's coming to me now. My mom was, you know, and freaking out with his dad. And they're like, well, should we go to the police station and start, you know, declaring like, you know, maybe he was arrested or something? You know, because police they've been doing raids for a long time. They just round up young people they see on the streets and take them and then wait for parents to show up and come bail them out, you know. And he shows up like around 9 p.m., which now it's not late as an adult, but back then, you know, it was, what if this young kid who's never gone out, you know, it's considered, how dare you come back this late? And he showed up around 9 p.m. and they were, you know, yelling at him, and he had a plastic bag with him. What is in the bag? And we were all like peeping from the room, you know, like, what happened? What happened? And I know they were yelling at him, and then he finally came into the room. We couldn't hear everything, and then he came into the room, and we're like, what's going on? Like, you know, he's like, oh, I went shopping. Like, what? Yeah, I went shopping. I saved money. He's like, yeah, I took all the money I had and I went shopping. Well, I had to go to this other market that was like in the other part of town or whatever. I can't remember what part of Port Harcourt he lived, but he went somewhere, and so he was literally going from shop to shop to shop to find what he wanted to buy. He probably overpaid for the jeans, but I think it was just like 2 pair of jeans that then it took him the whole day to figure it out. And just you saying this night just brought that to my mind. Like, but he had that experience, and he was happy. He didn't. I think he got beat, he got flogged or whatever, but he didn't care. He didn't care because I don't recall him crying when he came into the room. He had that smug look on his face,
Yeah.
but he was like, I went shopping. But and then later on, I remember my mom saying something to my uncle when his dad was still yelling, and she was like, well, he knows how to buy good clothes though, so at least he didn't go buy drugs or something, you know. And he was actually nice jeans that he bought, so, you know. But just something like that, I just remember that, you know, because we went, nobody trusted us with money. Go buy your own clothes. No, you had to be over 18 or probably in your 20s before you started doing that.
I'm sure my parents were cringing at some of the choices I made as well.
I've seen the photos.
Hey,
I won't post them, don't worry.
so you know, I'm sure they you know, they were a night or two when they were like, what was she thinking? But in general, they did just it was kind of a little bit of a give and take. Like they did trust me, right? But at the same time, I was always the kid when I said like, oh, this is where I'm going. I'm going to be back by 9. I was back by at 9:15 the latest, right? But so that allowed over time, that just built the trust that my parents were like, oh, okay, so you come back by midnight, right? And as long as I kept being back on time, like the rules became less strict, I guess. Oh,
Yeah.
and of course I was getting older too. And so interestingly though, this goes back to the policing part. The first time I was carded for alcohol, so in Germany you're allowed to drink beer and wine when you're 16. And I had these older friends, and they just happened on that night. The ones that I was out with were all of the boys, because the girls were already at the party that we were going to. And in Germany, you can have an open container in the street too. That's generally allowed. So we were walking down this street to get to the party, and it was like an industrial kind of part, more industrial part of town. And that was the first night I got carded. It was my 16th birthday. It was the day of my birthday. So yeah, that worked out well. Because it definitely was not the first time I had beer.
But hey, it's good that the decision was made to start trusting you, and they put you in a position to start learning how to take decisions, because over time you get used to it. You're
Yep.
allowed to fail, to make mistakes, and learn from it and grow from it. Because no matter what we do or how we think we have the best interests of our younger ones, of our children, they still have to make their own decisions themselves.
Yeah.
And we cannot claim to be protecting them always by making their decisions for them 24/7. They will have to get into that phase where they get to decide. And that's why when I've been in a room where they're talking about, oh, how do we change the leaders? How do we do this? And I'm like, why don't you start teaching putting young kids, allowing young kids make decisions about leadership? Who do you want to lead you? Allow them to decide. And if you don't allow them to start making that decision, well, then is it when they become 25, when they become 30, then you're like, okay, now go decide. And like, we've never made that decision in our life, so now that they're going to start staring at you, okay, you make the decision. And then they're not like, oh, these youths, we can't trust them, because that's what's happening back where I was born. You having that conversation now that we can't trust the youths. But I'm like, you never trusted them. But they don't realize that it kind of grows, because in the family, at home, you never trusted them. And out in the society, how it plays out too, because you don't trust them at home to make decisions. And then in schools, you don't trust them.
And how are they supposed to learn to trust themselves if they
Yeah.
don't get to make choices?
Because and at the same time, you're always selling a perfect picture that you have to be perfect,
Yeah.
because you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to fail, and learn from that failure and move forward. So
I do really think my parents raised me. I don't know if they did this intentionally. I never actually asked them, but they did definitely raise me to be independent, to think for myself, and also be able to defend my position, like in a conversation and discussion, whether that's just which food I like better, or political, or but they did teach me that to a certain extent. And the same with money, for example. And I think the other thing, where when it comes to that, like teaching me to be independent, I think the fact that my mom was working helped kind of set that expectation for me as well. Right? So I never at any point during growing up, and my mom didn't work all the time, and she didn't always work full time, but I knew that she worked, right? And so during growing up, I never had this expectation that I was going to go marry someone and they're going to take care of me.
Yeah.
I always had the expectation of like, whatever happens, I can take care of myself.
Very important. So, moving forward, you came to you will come to United States at a pretty young age, your first time ever, and that also leans into what we've just been discussing about being your it links to your being independent. And how old were you when you made your first trip to United States, and what was the what stood out? What shocked you? You know, positive or negative? Was there any culture shock that you had in that moment?
So the first time I came to the United States was for vacation. I was 16. I did come without my parents. And I traveled with my boyfriend at the time, who was a couple years older. So he had a driver's license. His brother had just been in the U.S. for a high school year. He left the car that the brother had purchased for us at the airport, and then we took the car from there, and we traveled up and down the East Coast for 6 weeks. Now, this was before everyone had a cell phone, so yeah, my parents really had to trust that everything was going to be okay. We did call them from payphones, like here and there, right? Like if we had enough quarters and if we remembered. But yeah, I think culture shock at that point in time was different. And the reason I'm saying that is because at that point, a lot of my expectation about what the US was like was based on pop culture.
Okay.
So a lot of the things we went to see and like the stuff, was also more driven by being the typical tourist, right? So I have to admit, we did go to SeaWorld, right? Because I did not know, or maybe not understand, and didn't have the resources available to really understand that what they're doing there is not good for the animals that are there.
I didn't know until when was that? When did that report come out?
A few years ago?
Yeah,
maybe?
that was the only time it began to occur to me that
Yeah, so this was when I was 16, right? And like SeaWorld was like one of those brands that you've heard of, or one of these parks that you've heard of, that we didn't have anything similar in Germany. Like smaller maybe, like, you have like these dolphin shows here and there at the zoo or something, but nothing of that. So that was something I really wanted to see. I went to go see Niagara Falls, Washington, D.C.
So wait, where did you guys start from?
So we landed in D.C. and then we drove to West Virginia, because
that's quite a tourist destination.
the boy I was traveling with, he had stayed in West Virginia for a year during his high school time, so he had friends there. So the person that he had stayed with for the year, and then his brother had stayed with a family in the same community for a year.
Yeah.
So yes, this wasn't even like a city in West Virginia. This was like a tiny town in the mountains where your next door neighbor is like a mile down the road. So that actually was a bigger culture shock than, I think, like a more unexpected one. Because first of all, I had a really hard time understanding people, right? So English as a second language, never been to the US before, still learning how to have a regular everyday conversation, because that's not what you learn in school when you're in Germany, right? We have English from fifth grade on, but you don't learn how to actually have a conversation with someone. You learn kind of like what's in the book and how to like read text and then write answers. It's more like school. It's more like school English.
Okay, yeah,
it's not.
I never considered it from that point of view, but
and even just simple things like household items.
Yes,
like someone was telling me to put the lettuce in the colander, and I just stared at them. I was like, I have no idea what you just said.
Well, I understand. I relate to that because coming from someone who understood just British English. Well, I thought I knew American English until I arrived here, and then when people started speaking to me in American English, I was like, yeah, that's it's different from the movies.
Yeah.
When someone's talking to you directly, you're like, bro, what are you saying again? Yeah, I think it was just bro. I was just saying bro. And then now I can't even speak British English anymore. So.
Yeah, it goes away. So I learned British English in school because that's, what you learn in where I went to school. And that completely went away.
Yep.
I do think I sound a lot more American now than...
Yeah, you do. Upstate New York. Again.
Oh, please. But yeah, so, I met these West Virginians who are from this really small place. And some of them went away for college and then moved back home to like take over the family business. But then there were also a couple of people. So at some point we were asked if we could help bring in hay. So we were bringing in, like they were bringing in the hay bales, and then we were putting them from the truck bed, the thing that behind the tractor, onto the conveyor that would then put it up on the top of the barn. I was the only female that was helping because they were asking us. I thought they meant that included me, so I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll help." And so that I think really surprised some of the older people, like, and when I say older, like in their 60s or 70s, who the last, like, this is going to sound horrible, but who the last time they actually left that particular part of West Virginia was when they went to war during like the Second World War or the Vietnam War.
Okay.
So they have, like, they went away, they came back and never left again kind of situation.
Yeah.
Those were also the people that I tried, but I just could not understand them. I literally needed a translator. And to everyone who's been to West Virginia, like if you go really deep into the countryside. Sorry?
What's the city called?
It's not a city, it was a town.
Okay,
I don't remember the name anymore. No. But I remember it was in Germany Valley.
What?
It was in Germany Valley.
There's a Germany Valley in there?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, I never planned to.
So
I've only driven past West Virginia.
I literally needed a translator. First time to the U.S., like that was where we spent the first week, and I just couldn't decipher the local. Like I just and I got really discouraged. I was like, I studied so hard, and I can't even communicate with people. But yeah, that was one type of culture shock, I guess. The other one was the religious side of things. So the other person we stayed with was a United Methodist do they call them pastor? Reverend, preacher? I don't know.
Pastors, okay.
Yeah. So because that was the person that my boyfriend at the time had lived with during his high school year.
Yeah.
So we went to visit him, and he was in a somewhat larger place. That place at least had a mall.
Oh, wow. I would like to stay there.
So, I mean...
Get some discount shopping.
No, I'm just saying that because, just to say, like, the place, like, I forgot what the town was called, but it was a little bit bigger. It was, like, the next bigger place. And so we had to go to church. Like, the week that we stayed there, we had to go to church on Sunday.
Oh, serious.
And on Wednesday or something. Yes, because we stayed at the pastor's house.
Oh,
right.
okay,
so and the other thing was we weren't allowed to tell anyone that we were actually staying in the same room and using the same bathroom.
Oh, yeah. We don't want no scandal,
Yeah, and then one thing I still remember to this day, which again, like maybe not a culture shock, but a like significant difference. The service that we did go to, the first thing that was happening was the pastor standing up and saying, welcome to the service today, and, can we get a round of applause for the janitor who just repaired the AC? And everyone stood up and clapped. I'd never seen that in church before. Like people standing up and clapping.
Oh.
Like
that must
growing up in Germany and only ever going to Catholic church, I guess.
Well, it's different.
you don't expect that.
I can see how that's, because I've been to Catholic church. I've been to Baptist. I've been to Methodist once and Evangelical a lot. So,
it's just very different.
It's different. All of them are different. Anglican, too. I've been to Anglican. Yeah, I've been all. I've been to all.
Yeah.
So, I can see how someone who hasn't been to anything outside of Catholic, you're gonna be like, what is going on here?
Well, even if you go to Protestant church in Germany, like people don't just like stand up and clap.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't happen. So yeah, but I think there was a whole different level of culture shock once I moved here, because that's when you start looking under the surface, right? When you just come and go on vacation and you drive around and you know, maybe like stay in a hotel or motel here, you stay on a playground, you talk to people, but you don't get to look under the surface as much. And I think once you actually live here, it's a different story. Also, you know, now I'm going to date myself, but like this was like 96 that I came for the first time. So yes, we had the internet, but obviously not the same way as we have it today, right? So did I read? I was reading news in English, so U.S. news, but not at the same level as you have access today, right?
Of course.
So that's what I mean with like once you actually move here and you start to see everyday life and you start to experience how people treat each other on a daily basis, and you actually see the news every day, like the local news, you get a very different, how do you say, like a very different understanding of the differences.
The whole glamour changes. You no longer.
Well, I mean, the glamour parts can still stay, right? But you're adding onto it.
You can add, or you can subtract, or you can choose to ignore, depending on
of course,
where
yes.
you are, or what you choose to see. But
yes, and some people. I mean, some people
it depends
who,
on what you know, where you what you choose to see, or where you. But
that's actually very true, because
if you stay and you experience, because you did a whole tour, which many people still not done. I won't name names, and so you got to experience a lot, and that's something to take home, and you know, and you're a curious person, so you obviously started asking questions. I'm surprised you didn't ask you didn't get in trouble with the pastor, but yeah.
No, because he himself was very liberal and very open-minded.
Okay.
It was more that he was worried that he was going to get in trouble if we tell like he also was fine with me drinking beer in his house, because I was over the age of 16. I was allowed to do it in Germany, so he really didn't care. So I had a beer with dinner when they had a beer with dinner. Yeah,
but at the same time, what state was that? That was still in West Virginia.
Yeah, that was still in West Virginia.
Yeah, and then that's like. Isn't that like drinking age there with the parents?
I don't know.
No.
But he was not my guardian. He was not my parent. He was just an adult.
Yeah, technically he was your guardian.
Yeah.
By the rules there.
Well, so yeah, I guess.
So now you had that tour. So that already sowed a seed in you, and then you'll decide to come back full time.
Yeah.
And then go full gangster New York, East Coast. Unlike Namik, who claims who's East Coast but is loyal to Tupac Shakur. That's our good friend, but.
Yeah,
he's been marking Tupac Shakur's anniversary. He won't wear anything else for the past few days. I'm like, bro, give it up. You won't move to LA. Well, you'll be in New York rubbing it in our faces. You're supposed to be loyal to BIG. Live in Brooklyn too. But anyway, I had to throw that dig. But yeah, so you chose New York. Surprisingly, you didn't choose West Virginia. So you should have been in West Virginia. Why?
Oh, well, so first of all, they're way too conservative for me.
Okay, why not DC?
I would have gotten myself in trouble.
You could have gone to DC then.
I could have, but I didn't think DC was awfully interesting. I mean, it's great for like a tourist destination, right? So like in my mind, DC was a tourist, like government and tourism. Like no I didn't experience any like regular life there, so it's really just government and tourism.
You took good notes then.
And so New York also happened I don't want to say by accident, but it wasn't 100% planned. And so when I finished high school, I applied to a bunch of different study programs, and one of which was called European Business Program. European Business Program at the time, I mean, it still is a network of schools where they have a defined program on how you move between the school that you started and a partner school abroad. And so at the time, I went with the link with Rotterdam because it was in English.
Yeah.
And you had to do an internship in Germany and an internship abroad. And when I was getting ready to apply for internships abroad, it was just after 9/11. So it was really, really hard to find anything, to find a company to welcome you, you know, like they were just weren't thinking of that at the moment. Like they had way other things to deal with. And so I relied on my school to help me find a placement. And they had worked with this small company that happens to be in New York before. I guess they placed people there before, and they were looking for someone. And they said, yeah, sure, just, you know, send them over. It's fine. And so that's what I mean, like kind of by accident. I hadn't really planned it in a way. It was just so happened that, you know, the school had a placement in New York and they recommended me, and that's how I got here. And I stayed here for 6 months working.
So when you arrived in New York this time, because you've gotten a little bit wiser, you know, I've added a little experience. Was it different? Was there a different shock?
Yes. But that had more to do with the circumstances rather than with the US or with New York.
Yeah.
A reason is I got really sick on the flight over.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So I'm assuming it was something I ate on the plane.
Obviously, it's not New York. We got good food here.
No, because it started
people sick. Yeah.
because it started at the airport. I wasn't feeling well getting off the plane, so I'm collecting all my stuff. Right now, I'm coming as a student, so I have like no budget. So I had looked up how to travel from JFK Airport on public transportation. So I'm making my way, you know, like the airport train, the A train. Of course, it takes forever. And like I'm starting to feel really queasy. So by the time I actually finally in East Harlem at the hostel that I was trying to get to, first off, there's a sign in the door that says, call this number when you get like here, because there was actually no one at the front desk. So the door was locked. Now I'm standing there. I have traveler checks in my, and maybe I have like $10, but I have no coins. I have no cell phone because I still had to get that, right? I just landed. What do you do? So I went to the,
Tap dancing.
I went to the bodega at the corner with like, you know, all of my luggage. And the gentleman was so nice to like call the number and say, hey, there's someone here who booked a room, like, or a bed. Basically, it wasn't a room, it was a bed. Can you guys open the door? Wow. But at that point, I'd already been up for like 24 hours. I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be so strange. So all that to be said, I got sicker and I had to go to the hospital because I obviously didn't have a regular doctor. At this point, I was really sick and I was not keeping anything in, not even water.
Wow.
I was severely dehydrated and I was starting to have some real problems. So I still wanted to save money, so I walked to the hospital. I go to the emergency room. Again, very different experience than what I'm used to. I'd been to the emergency room in Germany, and it's a very, very different experience. First off, they don't actually like even talk to you until you're properly checked in. And that process alone was a test of patience.
That you're talking about the American, right?
Yes, the American. Yes.
Okay.
So this was Mount Sinai in, what was it, 2002, I guess. And I'm sitting there and this woman keeps saying like, okay, I have, you know, writing down my address that's on my insurance paperwork. Because I had insurance paperwork through the internship. But it is like an international insurance. So the address on there is my parents' address in Germany.
Yeah.
So she keeps asking, what state is that in? And I keep telling her it's not in a US state. This is an international insurance. This is in Germany. And she keeps asking, yeah, but what state is Germany in? And I'm just like, but I don't even know how to answer. Like, I don't know how else to explain to you that Germany is its own country. And so that in itself was like, and mind you, like I'm sitting there, I'm not like in the best shape. I'm really sick. Then there's signs everywhere that, you have to pay a minimum of like $750 just to be seen by a doctor or something like that. So like on the inside, I'm panicking a little bit because until my first paycheck from the internship comes in, like 500, I think was what I had with me. I did have a credit card, luckily. So, but yeah, I was like panicking a little bit there. Then, they take care of me eventually. I see a doctor, whatever. The doctor is super nice. She actually gave me a bunch of samples of the medication that I needed just to make sure that I had enough. And didn't have to wait for like the international insurance to figure out how to get me medication.
Okay.
Now it's like 12 hours later or so, and I get checked out again. I go to the whatever place they took me to sign out, and the woman presents me with a bill. That's when panic really set in. That was a big number, just for the fact that they like didn't really run any tests and just gave me an IV with like salt water basically. For a couple hours.
How much was the bill?
I don't recall exactly, but it was just a huge amount. And luckily, the person at the billing desk was super helpful, because she figured out that the person in the beginning never actually entered the fact that I had insurance because she couldn't figure out how to enter my address.
Wow.
So otherwise, I would have sat there with like a couple $1,000s to pay. And this was, I'd been there for 2 days, in the country for 2 days. So that was my introduction.
Would have invented GoFundMe right there or something.
That was my introduction to the U.S. healthcare system. That was not fun.
That was quite the shock.
Yes. So I think like that was one of the first times that I looked under the surface, because now I was here and lived here and had to operate in daily life as opposed to being a tourist.
Well, your welcome package was immediately. It was like, bang, get started. But we're glad you made it. And then we got to meet you. You got to meet me. And hey, it's not that bad, the deal that you got. See, New York still works out.
Yes.
So, I was going to jump forward a little bit. But I just need one story from you that I've heard before, because my first time to Germany with you, something happened. We had just seen Get Out before we left, and I got to.
That was before you even met my parents, right?
Yeah, just before.
For the first time.
Yeah, I was with you.
Okay.
We get to your parents' house, and your parents had to go. They had something planned that evening, so they left us at home. And I had to go, they had told me where the good stuff was, the beer. And it was out in the back, but it was dark there, I didn't think about it. I was like, no need to turn on the light. I'm about saving energy, So I go out there and grab a bottle and sit down, having my nice cool beer. The weather was cool. And I'm having a sip. And then you just run and come grab the beer from me and take off. And then return back with another bottle that looks exactly like the bottle that I was drinking. And I was like, why would she do that? I've barely been in this house for 5 to 10 minutes. Is the black guy should the black guy start worrying or what? I was expecting tea to be the weapon of choice, not beer. I mean, that's a smart way to go if you're going to use beer to get the black guy, especially if the black guy is me. But, I don't know how to feel right now. And then you will say, and you explain. So, but, so you, obviously it was something about German beer that made you do that.
Yes.
So what was that story you told me about while you were in school?
Okay, so when we were in university and we were in Rotterdam, school was in English, but everyday life still happened in, like you had to have minimal Dutch language skills to kind of get by. And we had to learn Dutch in school for 4 semesters to even get the diploma from from the Dutch, like from the Rotterdam University. And that means everyone on our side had to do that. So people coming from France, people coming from Spain, from the UK, and us from Germany. Now, Germans, especially Germans who also speak English, have an advantage in learning Dutch because there are some similarities.
Oh, really?
There's some similarities between Dutch and German in terms of the words.
Yep.
And then there's some similarities between English and Dutch in terms of the grammar. So we that's what this is. We had a little bit of an advantage. So come one night, my roommate, who's also German, whose name was also Verena, we were out with a group of people who consisted mostly of French and Spanish students. And we're sitting by the lake and everyone's drinking and people are starting to get a little tipsy, like get a little drunk. And at some point, Verena and I were looking at each other and we're like, what is going on here? Because we looked at the beer that they had bought and we didn't think anything of it but we looked at the beer and they actually purchased alcohol-free beer, but they were acting tipsy. So it turns out that like they didn't know they were drinking alcohol-free beer. But yeah, we had a really good laugh about that because they were really just like, some people were like, oh my God, I already had 6 beers. And we were like, yeah, but it's just like flavor, like it's like drinking soda. It's just, beer flavored soda. It tastes really good. So for those, who don't know this, but German beer and Dutch beer, most brands have alcohol-free versions that taste pretty much exactly the same as the ones with alcohol. And so it tasted good. And, we were having a good time. We were laughing and talking, but like we were definitely not getting drunk. So yeah, I did notice that night the bottle that you picked had a little red tag on the side that said alcohol-free. And I did know that you didn't mean to drink the alcohol-free beer.
Yeah, you missed your chance to get one over me. That would have been a perfect story to tell for generations to come. Like, oh, he was drinking alcohol-free beer and he got tipsy, and and then and later on the truth was revealed to him, and he was like, no, that can't be, no.
But I don't think you get drunk from drinking beer. I've never seen you drunk from drinking beer.
Yeah, I'm like an elephant now. An elephant never forgets. So kind of same with me. I can never get drunk. That's it. I just go to sleep.
Well, no. So I've seen you drunk, just not from drinking beer.
You see me drunk before?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I get drunk on.
I don't know. I wasn't with you that night. I just only saw you coming home. And then going straight into the bathroom.
Someone got me drunk. I got drunk. That's classified info. Let's move on. We don't need to talk about that. Let's move on more. People don't want to know about that. People want to know the real stuff.
Okay.
Let's focus on you. They don't want to focus on me. Yeah. So back to the more fun stuff.
Okay.
Since you've mentioned beer, maybe we should just go straight to food.
Oh, okay.
Should we do food intersects with me? But anyway, yeah. Let's. Well, it relates to me in a way. So maybe we should start with you've been in New York, and a few years down the line, did you ever think that one day you'll end up dating someone who was born in Nigeria, and how did that happen, or how did that go about? How did you start dating a Nigerian-born individual? And did it prepare you for what you were about to walk into,
No, I was not prepared.
Yeah, tell us about that. Spill some tea.
Well, so I
Including
never planned
first date experiences too.
I never planned to date someone from Nigeria, but I also never not intended to date someone from Nigeria, right? Like, so I think being single in New York, I know some people have like, very specific ideas of the person they want to be with in terms of the background. For me, it was much more important the character, right? Like the values, humor, things like that. I didn't have like a pre-filter based on nationality or anything like that, or just like background.
You're much more nicer than I am. You're much more refined. My standards was just simple, like
female.
Like a woman, sugar mama preferably, who got like like a Saudi princess type money, oil field preferably, but
Yeah, sorry,
no,
that didn't work out, did it?
It's okay.
Yeah, so I think
I'll go West Virginia instead. So.
And I think like so first date experience. Well, I had a really shitty day at work that day. That's why I responded.
Damn.
And I just and
is it too late to change my mind now?
Well, ask the baby.
Oh, she gonna side with me. I know how to get out of my side.
So and so we met for drinks, and well, on my side it was dinner too. I don't remember if you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it turned into dinner, and I had a really good time talking. But then, and then you even brought me back to my car, and
such a gentleman.
Yeah. Well, I then also in return drove you back to the subway station that you need to go to. So, but
I was gonna walk that far. Hello.
Well,
I already complete my 10,000 steps. I didn't need to do extra walking.
But so the thing that almost derailed everything
was what?
Was that you didn't even try to go in for a kiss.
Did you put on the green light or did you put on the yellow light? The yellow light about to turn to red or the yellow light about to turn to green?
I think it was pretty green.
You sure it wasn't the yellow light?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a yellow light.
No.
We'll have to check the replay. Pretty sure it was. You sticking to that story?
Oh, I'm sticking to that story.
That's now I recall it, but pretty sure based on my record. So how was it rectified?
Well, I don't remember like who texted whom, but you did send me a text that night mentioning the fact.
Such a gentleman.
Mentioning the fact, and then I responded that I had wanted you to try kiss me or to kiss me, and you just didn't. So I think that led to us scheduling a second date.
See, listeners, y'all should book your copy of my book on how to win a second date. It's coming out soon, but I accept pre-orders. Just PayPal me the money, and you get your copy soon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I remember, like, on the second date, I stayed out. We stayed out. We went to the movies? Yeah, we went to the movies.
Well, we went to the Mexican. You took Mexican
for drinks, yes.
Place for drinks.
That was, like, underneath the movie theater.
Yeah.
Then we went to the movies, and then...
what movie was it?
Deadpool.
Yeah. Good choice.
And I think you saw it for like the third time or the fourth time that day, but I had never seen it. So
not that. What are you trying? What kind of picture are you trying to paint?
No. You've seen it. You've seen it 3 times before you went with me that day.
Don't get people concerned about me. Like, what's this guy doing with his life?
But so all that to be said, and then we got to talking, and I got back home at, I want to say, like 1 or 2 in the morning. And the car to pick me up to go to the airport was coming 2 hours later, and I had not packed a single thing.
That wasn't my fault.
For a 10-day trip. So that's like, yeah.
Yep, I wasn't.
I know that wasn't your fault,
exactly.
But
I just had a.
It kind of was your fault.
Nah. That wasn't my fault. I told you to pack ahead of time.
I did make it.
I know you did. I know, but it wasn't.
But I made some questionable choices in what I took with me terms of clothing, because I kind of just threw things in a
And I
bag.
wasn't responsible for that. Full disclosure. But you made it.
Yes.
So, and you did not answer the part about, so were you prepared? Did it prepare you for what you were about to walk into?
No, but I also
What? Golly. You can't-
I was not prepared.
Oh my goodness. In what way? Jollof
I
rolls?
had no expectation what it means
Being
to
called
date someone who was born in Nigeria. Not at all. I had no expectation or preconceived idea of what that would include.
Chief Daddy?
Yeah, you didn't strike me as that type.
Oh.
I also didn't know anything about Nigerian food, to be honest, before I met you.
Exactly. And that's why you got
But now I
prepared.
know Nigerian jollof is the best.
Oh, see, you jumped ahead of the question. But hey, you had how many jollof have you had?
Oh, so I had Nigerian, Ghanaian, Senegalese, and what's the other one?
You've had, I think you've had Togo and Cameroon, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Togo, yes. Cameroon, I don't remember which one that was
So
specifically.
maybe that's me. I've probably because I've had more. I've had almost the whole of West Africa. But yeah.
Yeah.
And you stick by.
Nigerian jollof.
See, I did not make her do that. It's because y'all know my opinion when it comes to jollof. I love them all. Just keep inviting me. You know, and you know, but nobody.
Well,
can
I eat.
force me.
Yeah, I eat them all too. But if I had to pick one, then yeah.
Okay. Hey, you know, I'm just, you know, you heard it from her. You know, she's a neutral party, and you know, you heard it from her. So, but you're a New Yorker, and when it comes to food, where does your heart belong to? What's your overall favorite? If you have to betray one food, you know, you can betray which, but which one is like you can't live without?
I have a favorite.
Yeah,
I do.
you have to.
It kind of depends on the day.
I don't think anybody has given that answer. What should
I
go
can't.
to?
I can't think of what my favorite food is.
Like, what's your favorite German food, or not northern German food, or not Western? Oh. Okay, what's your favorite New York food?
Well, you can get any food in New York.
No. Moving on. You see, this
No, but what did you think? What was my favorite food?
I don't.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah. But we can't. I'm not the guest.
Because that doesn't matter. But you had something in your notes there. So what did you think was my favorite food?
I did not write your food in here. I really wrote questions. I'm not going to give out
No, but
trade secrets.
to be a little more. So I don't think I have a favorite food because I like a lot of different foods, as you know.
I know.
And I like to try everything
Yeah.
at least once. Because how else can I say that I don't like it? And I think New York is actually really great. I mean, right now it's a little bit harder because a lot of places are closed down and a lot of places have limited, you can't really eat in right now, right? But in general, what the great thing about New York is that you can get every food here.
Facts.
I mean, we had what was it? Uzbek.
Yeah. We've had
Right.
Uzbek.
That's something I would have never even really thought of.
Found by who again? Found by who?
Me.
What? What?
Uh-huh.
I'm the one who found that place, and I said I haven't eaten there, but I told you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness! See, I can't even get.
I looked it up in a Google search, but okay.
When? I'm the one who told you about it.
No, you didn't.
How are you gonna know about the place? I'm the one who's been walking past it 5-10 times. Oh my goodness! You've been hanging around Nigerians for too long. Look at that.
Well, whose fault is that?
Chief Daddy. Well, let's see. Let's see. So, if you had to do it all over again, would you choose New York City or would you be on the West Coast?
Now that you say it's New York versus the West Coast, that's like the only two places I could see myself to begin with in the United States right now. I've been to
No
other
Dallas? Really?
yeah. Dallas is still in Texas.
So, there's Austin. It's a hippie town.
Yes, but it's still in Texas.
There's New Mexico. I don't know what's
I
there. It's a desert. I'm mad at
No,
me.
I think I do what I let's look at it from the other perspective, right? Like, so what I do appreciate about New York is that it is cosmopolitan. What I appreciate about Brooklyn, and specifically the part of Brooklyn that we do live in, it is rather diverse, right? Like, so if we
Coming from upstate person. Just saying.
no, but what I mean is, like, we go to the playground and we see families that are like ours, right? We go out and we see people or couples that are mixed. We do see people who look very differently from us, and I think the diversity in specifically in this area of Brooklyn helps me feel at home here, and I do like that everything is walkable, right? Like, so for me, that's a little bit has a little bit of a, like, the metropolitan, somewhat a little bit European feel. Like, you can walk to the park, you can walk to the supermarket, that kind of stuff. You don't really need a car necessarily. And so I really like that. Whereas other places, that would probably not be the same, right? I do think yes, does New York have a lot of faults? Definitely. But generally I do feel at home here. Now, I've only traveled to the West Coast. I've never lived there. So I can't fully say that would not work out. But I do not like the idea of earthquakes.
All right. You passed
I've
the test.
experienced an earthquake before, even just a tiny one.
Yeah.
And I found that very unsettling.
Yeah. I experienced one in Grapevine, just outside Dallas. Yeah. I was like, yeah, it's not for me. Probably that's why I never moved to Japan. I could have been over there in the anime industry. But that's a different story entirely. So, you are also a HR professional, and
Sometimes.
sometimes. Oh, alrighty. That's a new one to me. I'm not gonna ask what the other one is, but I know one other, but there might be something else that I don't know, but I don't want to find out on air. But yeah, what's a key advice to anyone, especially young girls, looking to get into your line of work, especially girls from my background, if they're interested in going into your line of work, your field of HR, what's the key advice that you give to them?
So I think because I've always worked for global organizations, in roles that had responsibility for more than one country, that those roles are usually with larger companies. And what I've seen, the best way to get into those organizations is get an internship during the summer while you're still in school. Get a foot in the door. Even if you don't get an offer from that company, if you have a big name on your resume as an intern, you have a much higher chance to get picked up applying for an entry-level role. And I did not have that because I was coming from, I mean, I had an internship here, but it was a small company. Like I said, it was a pretty small company the university had a relationship with. So when I got here, I started working for a German company, or Germany-based headquartered company. And what got me in the door were my German skills.
Oh, that was the sound of the bribery tool dropping. I think she's falling asleep. Yeah.
And so, like I said, what got me in the door were my German skills. And the same when I then moved into HR, I went for a non-HR position in an HR team. So I was the person dealing with like builds and vendors and stuff like that for an HR team.
Okay.
But what got me in the door again were my German skills, because that was a company headquartered in Switzerland. But yeah, if you are coming from an English-speaking background, I think the best option is, or a really good option is, to do an internship while you're still in school during the summer. A lot of large corporations have internships, like programs that are very in-depth and very organized.
Yeah.
I have friends who used to run these programs, for example, in some companies, right? So Danielle ran one of those. There's a lot of thought that goes into it to actually like not just use those people that come in, the students that come in as cheap labor, quote unquote, but to really like give them an experience and teach them something about the company as well as the job. So that also gives people a really good insight in whether they really want to do HR.
Yeah.
Because when I was, quote unquote, growing up, right, when I was going to university, I did not think in a million years I would end up in HR. Because the way that it was talked about and the classes that we have that were relating to HR were incredibly boring. It did not sound interesting at all. But maybe that had to do like with the professor or the way it was incorporated into the overall schedule. I don't know. It's been too long. But I do know distinctly like that was not on my list of choices of like the type of job I was going to go for. So I kind of like came into it, like I said, from like, I was doing a more business related role within an HR team, and then got to see what the HR team actually did.
Yeah.
And thought that was really interesting. So when I did my MBA, I then focused on HR related classes. So yeah, and I do think like it ended up being a really good fit. So far, it's worked out.
I've seen you in action, so yeah, I agree with that assessment.
Thank you.
You're super at what you do. So, and I it was interesting. You also mentioned something which I think you're also saying, well, language might be helpful, adding language skills to HR.
Yeah, so in the sense that what got me in the door at those two first companies once I moved to the US was proficient German language skills, right? Because those were like one of them was a Germany-based company, the other one was a Switzerland-based company. So if you, let's say, speak fluent French and you are applying for a organization that's like headquartered in France or in Quebec in Canada, where French is the dominant language, that can only help you, because you can be, not only does it give you a little bit of leg up compared to other candidates, but it also shows that you can also kind of have a bigger role in whatever job you step into, because you can be the quote unquote cultural translator between the headquarters stuff and the local team sometimes.
All right. It's a good gem to drop there. So, one of the other jobs that you have, that you share with me, but you still get you still do the heavier lifting, is motherhood. And how has it been for you handling motherhood, dealing with expectations from different cultures and communities, and raising a daughter during a pandemic?
That's a very big question, because I don't really I haven't really felt any expectations like that are specifically cultural to how we raise Clara. I do think I try to take cues from how my parents raised me, or what I think how they raised me. Like I said before, I don't know whether a lot of the stuff they did was intentional. I never asked them.
I think it turned out good. So.
Yeah, so and I try not to I don't know if it's I don't know if any of it is culturally driven. If it is, it's subconscious. It's not consciously figured out. I think the one thing that we do that is maybe less like mainstream American is like, even if we were going to go and look for a daycare for her again, right? Like I would look for something that's not so much like a school.
Yeah.
And I think that is culturally driven because Northern Europeans tend to have more of the approach that children should play and learn social interaction and fine motor skills and listening skills and patience and that kind of stuff. Patience by doing little projects and stuff like that, rather than being perfect at counting to 20 or counting to 10 and being able to already write all the letters of the alphabet before they even get to kindergarten, and all that stuff. I think that is culturally different, but since she's only 2, that hasn't really played a big role yet, I think. And the whole like parenthood during the pandemic, I think you're more impacted by that than I am, right? Because I do still, I mean, yes, like sometimes, I am already on a call with her on my lap in the morning, because working from home and, having her at home kind of overlaps things a lot. But at the same time, during the day, during my work day, I essentially close the door because I have to be on calls. I have to focus on my work. And you're actually shouldering a lot of the like day-to-day with her.
I just bribe her.
So that's what's happening while I'm not there.
I said, go away. Leave me alone.
Sure.
I don't know you. When you're hungry, call me.
I'm sure that's what's happening every day.
Yeah, that's it. Easy peasy.
That's how she learned all the animal names.
I don't know.
All by herself.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right, so getting to the wrapping up. But before we jump towards the wrapping up section, I have to hit you with one other question. It's a fun one. Don't worry. It's not a hard one. There's something you didn't touch on, which is still a big part of you. Music.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
So, where's your favorite? Where does your heart belong to?
Ooh.
Who's the artist?
Well, so generally, my heart does belong to hard rock.
I know. Well, I've seen the haircuts. I've seen the jackets. I've seen the photos. So.
And I am still very, very partial to the band that originally got me into kind of that like rock music genre, Die Toten Hosen. I still listen to them to this day.
Say it again.
Die Toten Hosen.
Die Toten Hosen. I said it right?
Yes. No, that was absolutely correct.
Yeah, well,
and what was a little bit
applause.
What is a little bit shocking is, so back when I was, I don't know, 12 or something, when I started listening to them, my parents did not approve because they had some texts that I guess they didn't think were appropriate. But at the same time, like, that didn't stop me. And, you get like these posters that you can put on your wall. And so in my mind, that's still the way they look. And then recently I read an article and I saw like their recent pictures they're now in their, like, I don't know, late 50s, early 60s or something. And I was shocked. I mean, of course, people get older, but in my mind, they were still looking like when I was 12.
They didn't age well, or what?
No, they just aged like anyone ages. I mean, they probably didn't age too well because, like alcohol and drugs at some point in their life. But
The fuel of the rock gods.
yes. Yeah, but I was just, I just didn't. I mean, logically, you should expect it, right? Everyone gets older. But for some reason, I didn't. So I was really shocked when I saw like a picture and it was like, that also makes me feel old, I have to say.
That's all right. You're just 21 like me.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Die Totenhosen. Is that a good place to start if someone wants to get into German rock?
I guess so. I think at this point, they're probably a lot more mainstream than they used to be.
Okay.
But I don't know. I'm not following the German rock scene that closely anymore.
What? You unpatriotic
I know, right?
German. We call ice. So let's hit final question.
Uh-oh. You sound so serious when you say that.
I'm always serious. You see me laughing? Do I look like I've been laughing all this time?
On the inside.
What? See, even our little one, the little Ronin over there said, nah, he wasn't laughing. He's been serious. He's been all business. So, final question. What's something that you would like to leave the audience with? Like, could be a word of advice, could be a line from a book you've read, or your favorite book, or a quote, something for this time. So, just anything, anything you like to say.
So, I should have probably prepared for that and thought about that a little bit more. But I think my shirt today says it all. Don't be a lady, be a legend.
And why is that?
Well, the whole idea of being a lady is overrated. And it's much better to be a legend.
I'm not in disagreement, but that wasn't the answer I was expecting.
No, but also, like, in light of current events, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away yesterday.
The
right?
notorious RBG.
Yes.
Rest in power.
And so that was a little bit of shock of the system. I didn't expect to be so emotionally impacted by it.
Yeah.
But she is definitely one of those people who did not worry about being a lady and became a legend. She did not worry about upsetting people with her stance on equality, even in her early parts of her career, where she argued in front of the Supreme Court. I believe it was the Supreme Court of all men, and got them to agree to her point on equality. She did not worry about how that got perceived and how that was reflected on her as a woman. And she fought for equality through the entirety of her career. And therefore became a legend.
Perfect. Genau. So, do you have any plugins that you like to leave us with?
Everyone needs to subscribe to this podcast. The best podcast out there. Everyone needs to share it with all of their friends all the time. And make sure all of their friends subscribe as well.
No, I'll take 5 stars.
Oh, right. 5 stars. Right. The ratings. Yes.
If you
and drop some ratings and some,
Not some. I'll just take 5 stars, not some ratings. But thank you for the, for that.
Well, you said at the beginning.
There was no gun pointed at her or anything. She wasn't. She'll eat. She'll be given. She'll get food. She wasn't promised anything. But
you said at the beginning, I'm one of your biggest supporters, and so I had to, live up to that promise.
I appreciate that. I mean, you did great. So, Dankeschön for blessing us with your presence and coming into the studio. And Dankeschön, Lil running over there. She She acting like we're not even important right now. But as soon as she's hungry, she'll holler.
I can't believe she's still awake.
She was the time. Yeah, she'll fall asleep soon. But yeah. So thank you all for joining us. This has been a pleasure, and I look forward to part 2 where you get to interview me. I'll think about it, but no promises. But thank you all, and keep on listening and join us for the next episode. And thank you for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for listening to White Label American. If you enjoy the show, we'll appreciate if you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. If you have any questions, comments, or have someone who will be a good guest on the show, or you want to be on the show, send us a message at whitelabelamerican@gmail.com. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at White Label American. Thank you for your support.